The night I met the stranger at midnight was the night I stopped being afraid of my own life. I remember it like a photograph burned into the back of my mind. The cold, the silence, the way the streetlights made the rain look like falling glass. I was 23 years old, sitting on the edge of a park bench at the far end of the city, and I had nowhere left to go. Not because I was homeless, not because I had nothing, but because everything I thought I was had just collapsed underneath me in the span of a single week. My name is Daniel, and 6 months ago I was the guy who had the plan. You know that guy. The one with the 5-year spreadsheet, the LinkedIn profile with the perfect headshot. The group chat full of people who thought he had it all figured out. I was that guy. Top of my graduating class, landed a job at a firm that made my parents cry, happy tears, at the dinner table. I was supposed to be the success story. The proof that if you just work hard enough, life rewards you. Then, in 7 days it all fell apart. My girlfriend of 4 years told me she had been in love with someone else for the last 8 months. My boss called me into a glass office on a Tuesday morning and told me the company was restructuring and that my position had been eliminated. And my best friend, the one person I called when things got dark, told me he was tired of being the emotional support and needed space. 7 days. 1 week. And I went from having everything to standing in the rubble of a life I didn't recognize anymore. So, there I was. Midnight. Pouring rain. Sitting on that bench like a man who had forgotten his own name. That is when he sat down next to me. He was old. Not frail, but the kind of old that carries weight. Like he had lived through things that would have destroyed most people, and came out the other side not bitter but quiet. He had a gray coat soaked through at the shoulders, a paper bag in his hand, and he sat down like he had been walking forever, and this bench was exactly where he was supposed to land. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. We just sat there in the rain like two people who had both given up on pretending everything was fine. Then he said, without even looking at me, "What did you lose?" And something about the way he asked it, not with pity, not with curiosity, but with this calm certainty, like he already knew the answer was everything, broke something open in my chest. I didn't even know this man, but I told him. All of it. The job. The girl. The friend. The plan that had crumbled. The version of myself I had been so sure of. I talked for what felt like an hour, and he just listened. Really listened. The kind of listening that makes you feel like your words actually matter. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his paper bag and pulled out a small thermos and poured himself a cup of something hot. And he said, "I lost everything too once. I was 31. Business failed. Marriage ended. Woke up one morning and realized the whole identity I had built was borrowed from other people's expectations." He paused. He said, "And you know what I found out?" I looked at him. I said, "What?" He said, "Losing everything is only the end of the story if you decide to stop writing." I felt something shift inside me right then. Not a magical transformation. Not a sudden surge of motivation like in the movies. It was quieter than that. It was more like a door, somewhere deep inside me that had been locked for years, cracked open just slightly, just enough to let some air in. He stood up after a while, pulled his coat tighter, and looked at me one last time. He said, "The version of you that you lost tonight was never really you anyway. That was armor. Go find out who you are without it." And then he walked away into the rain and I never saw him again. I sat there for another hour just breathing, just existing. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to be anything, or prove anything, or hold anything together. I was just a person in the rain having the most honest moment of my entire life. The weeks that followed were not easy. I want to be clear about that because this is not a story where one conversation fixes everything. I cried in my car more times than I can count. I had mornings where getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain with no summit. I applied to 40 jobs and heard back from 6. I started therapy and spent 3 sessions barely able to form a sentence before finally breaking through. I called my mother for the first time in months and actually told her the truth about how I was feeling, instead of performing the version of me she expected to hear. But something had changed. I was no longer running from the wreckage. I was walking through it. Slowly. Carefully. But walking. I started writing again. Something I'd abandoned in college because it wasn't practical. I started cooking meals from scratch, instead of ordering delivery, because I needed something in my life I could control and complete. I started waking up 20 minutes earlier just to sit in silence before the noise of the day arrived. Small things. Invisible things. But they were mine, built by me, not borrowed from anyone else's blueprint for what my life was supposed to look like. 6 months later, I am not the same person who sat on that bench. I have a new job, one that pays less than the last one, but makes me feel like I am actually contributing something real. I am single, and for the first time in my adult life, I am not terrified of that. I am learning who I am when no one is watching, when there is no applause, when the only person I have to answer to is myself. And here is what I know now that I did not know that night. The stranger at midnight did not save me. He just said the thing I already knew, but was too afraid to hear. That the life I was grieving was never really mine. It was a costume. And losing it, as brutal and as devastating as it was the most important thing that ever happened to me. Because now when I wake up in the morning, I am not playing a character. I am not performing a version of success for an audience that never asked for the show. I am just a person figuring it out in real time, honest, imperfect, and more alive than I have ever been. If you are in the middle of your own collapse right now, if you are sitting on your own bench at your own midnight, I want you to hear this. The falling apart is not the end. The falling apart is sometimes the only way to find out what you are actually made of. And what you are made of is so much more than the things you lost. Keep writing your story. The best chapters are still ahead.